Months of rumour and speculation all come to an end today as we return to racing for the opening event of what promises to be an enthralling season. Welcome along then to round one of this year's Formula One World Championship. We're a stone's throw from the enormous Port Phillip Bay for today's race at the 3.28-mile Albert Park circuit. It's a bumpy racing surface here, and the 14 corners could prove especially difficult in the wet conditions. So watch out for a safety car at some point during this Grand Prix. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Callie Mayer lines up on pole position, and Andrea Kimi Antonelli completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Leclerc, Jackson, George Russell and Sainz, Gasly, Norris, Lawson and Fernando Alonso, Albon, Behrman, Lance Stroll and Hadjar, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, Franco Colapinto and Esteban Ocon, Aaron, O'Sullivan, Pepe Marti and Zane Maloney rounds off the grid. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. And with me for this commentary this afternoon, former racing driver Naomi Schiff. And we've all welcomed this new team with open arms. It's brilliant for us as commentators and as fans of the sport as well. But what about the other 10 teams in the paddock? What's the reaction going to be like there?
They certainly are. And look, there is definitely a level of adjustment to be had here, whether that be the amount of space that they're having to take up in the paddock that takes away space from the other teams, or prize money being split. But on top of that, it's just one more team for everybody to have to keep an eye on. From a data perspective, it's more information, it's more data, it's one more thing to have to worry about. I think to begin with, they're mostly going to be an issue for the midfield to the back runners. But overall, it's just an extra worry for everyone.
Here we go then, the formation lap is underway. These are wet conditions here today. Each driver will no doubt be mindful of the wet surface as they prepare to race around the track. As the cars make their way back to the starting grid to form up and get ready for lights out, let's hope the race ahead today is a thrilling one that will go down as a memorable Grand Prix in the history books.
All right, here we are, drivers coming around the final corner. Wet weather tires on all of the cars along the grid. Mercedes of Callie Mayer and Andrea Kimi Antonelli starting on the front row. Konnersport having a decent start, McLaren having a decent start, I believe Red Bull and Ferrari as well. The top 10 is pretty mixed amongst the drivers for this season to start out this Australian Grand Prix, and it's going to be a wet weather race for who knows how long. 5 red lights are coming on. Mercedes starting on the front row, Leclerc P3. 5 red lights are off, and we're all off to a decent start. It is wet weather, so we have to be a lot more cautious coming to turn 1. So we see a little bit of a graphical issue with the spray coming off the cars. That's going to be the back end coming out on George Russell. A tad bit. He's between the 2 McLarens of Gasly and Sainz. Lando Norris dropping back down to P8. Alonso had a loss in P10 as we're on board with Russell. You can see and hear the tires screeching from the car. That's just us. I hate driving in the rain. So we're on board with Norris to the flash of the red helmet. Same livery as last season. I do know RM Designs has just recently released a concept for Konnersport. We might throw it in this season. I'm not quite sure yet what we want to do. Got a lot of stuff planned behind the scenes as we're looking through the rest of the grid. As everybody is starting to come through Sector 2. There's a good look at the Lotus here. And as I noted in the preseason episode, the livery is the only thing that works. So later on, you guys will see that the driver suits and the pit box, and none of that is working currently. The Audi Revolut car looking really good. I forget who did it. I forgot who made it, but looks really good. I think it's RM Designs. I could be wrong. We see Paul Aaron trying to make a move on the inside of Pepe Marty. He makes a position up into P19. No, he doesn't. They're 2 by 2 coming through this sector 3 on this first lap. Calimere is already 1.3 ahead of Antonelli, and Leclerc is already 1.1 seconds back behind Antonelli as well. Jackson sitting in P4 within a second. Sainz following within a half a second, trying to make a move in the background. Or no, they were just ahead. Russell, we're on board with Russell. He's already a second clear of Carlos Sainz. He's trying to stay ahead of Pierre Gasly. You can see the back end still trying to step out as we put the pressure down. And just, I don't know. I honestly feel like if I take my time in this wet weather, I lose so much time, especially with this year's game, or 2025. The straight line speed for these AI, even with mods, is just ridiculously insane. On board with Pierre Gasly in the Monster Energy McLaren. I am not going to get tired of seeing this on board throughout the season. He's trying to put pressure on George Russell as it's lap 4. Norris is trying to put pressure on Gasly as well to try to help his teammate. Coming into turn 3, not quite enough room to make a move, but Gasly putting too much pressure down, and that's going to be a spin for him. A front end broken. That's not going to be a safety car. That's not going to be a virtual safety car. That's going to be the first red flag of this 2027 season from Pierre Gasly. All right, first red flag here in the season 3 opener. I almost said preseason.
Okay, this is essentially a free stop, so let's think very carefully about our strategy for the rest of this race.
Okay, so it's going to be intermediate race weather, intermediate tire race weather, and a possibility of switching over to slick tires if it dries out fast enough towards the end, maybe the last 5 or 6 laps or so, I don't know. I just hope we have enough fuel for this. I kind of underfueled, or kind of leveled out in case, because I know the weather, wet weather to dry weather transition is pretty rough when it's races like Australia. But yeah, so lap 5 of 29, and we're going to be in intermediate weather. So we held our own as much as we could in the wet weather. I'm not a big fan of the wet weather. I have the advantages in the corners because I know how to handle those corners as best as I can. But we can't handle those straights, especially with this year's game, or last year's game. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this, jump back into this race for the season opener here in season 3. So let's get to it. I was under a lot of pressure during this first race, so excuse the stuttering from that bit. George Russell starting P6 as we are off. You can see we're trying to control this car as best as possible. The car's trying to sway, get out from under us as we're now on intermediate tires. Red flag means a free pit stop for everybody. So the opportunity of a 2-stop is no longer on the table, especially with this intermediate tire weather. Could be, well, it could last till the end of the race, but we never know. Clear weather is on the radar. So we see some of the other drivers, 2 by 2 coming through turn 4 from the back end of the field. So we get another good look at the Lotus of Colapinto leading Paul Aaron. Onboard looks great. Just there's what I was saying about the driver's suit. And I don't know what I want to do, but I do have an idea in mind with something that's coming up. We see Paul Aaron in the Maserati trying to make a move on Colapinto in Sector 2 into Turn 9, and he does so. Colapinto losing position, now in P17. Paul Aaron and Leon Lawson, who's up in P12. A very good pace with the Maserati cars as George Russell gains position on Aiden Jackson up the field. We take another good look at the Audi Revolut and the Toyota GR Haas cars. So we go back to the front of the grid. Jackson under pressure from Lando Norris now as we're coming to the end of lap 6. Rain is still in Sector 1 and Sector 3, and it's going to be like that for a while. I'm not sure how long it's going to be, but we get a good shot of Lando Norris's T-Pod cam, the red helmet from Lando Norris, to commemorate his championship loss, well, the battle he had with George Russell. And basically the backstory is he's out for revenge. He wants that championship battle or he wants that championship win to be his. So that's going to be his main goal for this season, is to try to get that driver's championship away from George Russell. Pierre Gasly, who's now back in P11 after that red flag incident, on board with George Russell with his gold championship helmet. You can see he's starting to lose a little bit of pace on Carlos Sainz. He's trying to close the gap with battery here in Sector 2. Jackson's trying to put pressure on as well. But lap 10, I think down the order? No, I think we were just on lap 10. I'm not sure. Lando Norris putting pressure on Aiden Jackson, who's just behind George Russell by 1.2. So I think it was just backtracking a few positions. I guess it was an unnecessary cut. But coming through Sector 2, Turn 9, no, that's going to be coming into Turn 11. He's going to be making a move on the outside at the end of the DRS zone. No DRS because the rain is still here. We're going to have to wait and see if they do activate DRS, if they do come in for pit stops, which means more than likely. So lap 10 at 29. At this point in the race, we are checking with our race engineer to see when the wet weather is going to be drying out. And I think about this time it was like maybe 5-10 minutes at the time. So Jackson and Behrman in both Red Bull Fords behind the two Konnersports, as Callie Mayer is still leading Leclerc at this time. Lando Norris putting pressure on George Russell down the main straight to start lap 13. No fight from George Russell. We know Norris has a lot better pace because, like I said, I hate driving in the rain. So we're going to give that way. We're going to give way to Lando Norris to see if he can move up at least another position against Carlos Sainz, as we're getting pressure from Aiden Jackson. Albon P9 in the Porsche Williams, Alonso P10 in the Aston Martin Honda. They haven't been doing great throughout the rest of last season. The back end still trying to step out on George Russell as we try to keep up with him. A little bit of a scrape there on the wall coming out of Turn 5, but we're now on board with Liam Lawson, who's currently sitting P12, putting some good pace against Bortoleto, and that's going to be the first engine failure of the 2027 season. That's going to be Liam Lawson out just about halfway through this race, if not, and he's already halfway. He's going to be stopping actually before Turn 9, so he's going to be right out of camera frame as the rest of the cars come through, and I believe that's going to be enough for a virtual safety car. We're on board with Jackson right after the virtual safety car gets lifted. As we see Russell up ahead, he's going to be putting pressure on George Russell. Behrman's about 1.7 seconds back, so he's not really going to be able to put some effort into helping his teammate here as he's battling George Russell, but that's not going to be it. He's going to have an engine failure too coming into the main straight, the end of lap 15. All the rest of these cars, it's going to be very unfortunate for Jackson and a Red Bull, as well as Maserati's debut to F1. As both of these very talented drivers, they put a really good fight in last season, and their race is cut short here in Australia for the 2027 season. So that's going to be another virtual safety car from Jackson's retirement. And we're going to be moving onwards towards our pit stops. We're going to be on board with Charles Leclerc. There's still a little bit of rain here in Sector 3. He's going to be tailing behind Callie Mayer by about 1.8 seconds. He's going to be coming in. He can be the first one coming in for his pit stop. And it's going to be on slick tires. So drivers are going to be making the call to slick tires. We see Antonelli staying out as well. So Mercedes playing the long game like they did last season. I believe that was a right rear tire issue for Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz in. We see Norris staying out. That's going to be Russell, followed by a handful of drivers coming in behind him. So that's Behrman, Albon, Gasly. Yep, Hadjar stays out. So we see a lot more cars coming in for those slick tires. More than likely, it's going to be hard tires for the majority of the grid. That Red Bull. The Red Bull looks good. A lot of the cars this season look good. If you guys wanted to, please let me know which liveries you like the most from this season in the comments. Greatly appreciate the engagement in the comments as we see the pit box from Alpine unaffected as we go to our F1 commentators.
here we are, once again, ready for what promises to be an exhilarating start to the 2027 Formula One season. The rain is easing, a dry line is emerging on the track, and joining me for another thrilling year is, as always, James Hinchcliffe.
If the rest of the season unfolds like today's race, we're definitely in for an exciting ride. The early retirements of former Konnersport driver Aiden Jackson and the Red Bull Ford and Maserati's Liam Lawson might have teams rethinking their approach if durability becomes an issue this season. And if you can recall to the season opener from last year here in Australia, Audi and McLaren had early retirements as well.
And speaking of early retirements, we're looking down the grid to those who have retired last season, Carlos Sainz and Nico Hülkenberg, who are both currently in the fight for some season opening points as long as they can hold on to their current positions.
That's right, Sainz is still with McLaren this season, and it looks like they've made solid progress during testing to be a strong points contender at the start. Hülkenberg is also giving Lotus a chance to score some points in their return to the F1 grid.
Lotus will have to compete against teams such as Williams, Porsche and Ferrari, as the top 10 is actually quite spread out at the moment. Konnersport holding decent ground from last season, and Mercedes seeming to be making the most out of the off-season testing as they sit out front. We have Christian Horner on the line with us. How's the team feeling with your drivers' current positions?
Hülkenberg came in for his stop with a problem on the left rear, but as a team we're confident the car can still make solid progress in these conditions. It's really about the drivers getting the car to work the way they need it to, so we can fight back through the field and push into the points.
The car appears to have competitive pace compared to some of the surrounding vehicles on the grid. Will there be an emphasis on improving specific aspects of the car to better compete against other teams?
The team can only achieve so much with less emphasis on competing against other teams, though that remains a consideration. The primary focus is on addressing the car's weaknesses ahead of upcoming races to position us where we need to be.
Well, it does seem with the weather drying up, Lotus seems to be right in the mix between Aston Martin and Maserati, so it will be very interesting to see how the team develops throughout the season.
Last thing before we move on, how has the team been able to gather information from a veteran driver like Hülkenberg?
The team has gathered extensive feedback from both drivers, and with Hülkenberg being in the sport for many years, the information and data he provides are greatly reinforced by his experience, and that will hopefully turn into a positive developmental progression for the team.
All right then, Christian, we thank you for your time as always here in the commentary box and hope the team can make some solid progress on their F1 return. With 10 laps to go in this still overcast Australian Grand Prix, a train of cars is starting to form behind world champion George Russell. Currently running in P6, just behind his new teammate, Lando Norris.
Even though they're next to each other in the current standings, there's still a 16-second gap between them, making it a tough challenge to catch up to Norris. It's going to be a difficult season for George, especially with the car's performance compared to the rest of the front runners.
With the championship title at stake, George faces a fresh challenge under this season's regulations, compounded by the team's setback of being unable to implement car upgrades until after Bahrain. This promises to be a thrilling watch, especially with less than 10 laps remaining. Time to dive back into the action.
And a lot of action has been happening with these pit stops. Antonelli leading his teammate of Callie Mayer by just over a second. DRS has yet to be activated. So we have George Russell behind Lando Norris by 16.7 seconds. And you see the train of cars between P7 and P12 forming behind George Russell. So that means it's going to be a very strong attempt from that train of cars to put pressure on George Russell to try to get him out of P6. Konnersport sitting in a decent position for points, even Mercedes and McLaren. So it's going to be a 3-4 constructor battle throughout the beginning of the season, pretty much. It's going to be a tough fight for Konnersport. So we see Hadjar make an attempt on overtaking George Russell, but he's going to be unlucky as we are on lap 25 of 29. He's going to be trying to put pressure into turn 3. It's not going to be enough for him as we see Russell conserving battery, and it's going to be like that throughout the entirety or throughout the remainder of this race, we see the back end kind of stepping out still as we see Russell putting the power down, coming into sector 2. The lap 28 to 29, Russell leading Hadjar, Gasly, Albon, Behrman, and Bortoletto. That big train of cars. We see Hadjar trying to make a move onto the turn 1. McLaren of Gasly. Did I say Gasly? Yeah, I believe it's Gasly. Final lap of the 2027 Australian Grand Prix. And there's so much pressure being put on George Russell right now, but right now we're coming up to our race leader, Andrea Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, coming around turn 12 and then turn 13. It's gonna be 3 seasons in this career mode, 3 seasons with Mercedes, and he's finally coming home to win a race in an F1 car. The first race win of his career in F1. So we see Calimere leading Charles Leclerc coming across the line. And I believe that's going to be Carlos Sainz. That's going to be Lando Norris. That's going to be George Russell leading. I'd like to say Albon, but I don't know. That's Pierre Gasly in the McLaren as well. A lot of pressure. Pierre Gasly. On board Pierre Gasly coming into turn 12. And I think that is Isaac Hadjar. But this Monster Energy McLaren is going to have a lot of straight line speed, so George Russell's going to have to put the power down as early as possible to try to make it a very close P6 against this Monster Energy McLaren. Can he do it? Yes, he can. That's P6 for Konnersport.
And your victor today, Andrea Kimi Antonelli.
And to get a victory at the first race of the season, this might be a sign of things to come. One thing's for sure is that this performance will be giving the team and the driver relief and confidence going into the rest of the season.
What a day it's been for Formula One, and what a day it's been for these 3 drivers. Time for the podium celebrations. Time for our drivers to celebrate. And it's a richly deserved victory today for Kimi Antonelli. Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.
All right, what a season starter. Mercedes swapping positions from where they started. They are dominating so far. Konnersport not too far behind. McLaren and Ferrari in the mix for the top 10. Isaac Hadjar coming up from P14 to P8 for a decent points finish. Albon P11 to P9. Oliver Behrman P12 to P10. Let's see. We started in P5. We only lost 1 position. Lando Norris went from P8 to P5 for some points. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the top 10. We had the spin from, I believe it was Colapinto. No, I think it was Paul Aaron or Albon. I'm not sure. One of those cars at the time of recording this race spun out, but by the time of post recording and editing, you guys have already been told what happened. But yeah, so first race in the rain in Australia didn't go as we planned. Didn't go planned for several other teams. Aiden Jackson in the Red Bull retiring early on. I don't know when he did. And then Liam Lawson, both of these cars retiring, causing a virtual safety car, which I haven't seen a lot lately so far in this game. But if that's going to be the case for wet weather conditions and retirements like that, then it'll be cool to have them as virtual safety cars. But Toyota not doing so great. Audi not doing so great. Lotus is back P15, P16. It looks like Porsche and I don't know where Liam Lawson was, but while Aaron P14 in the Lotus. So standings, top 10 as it stands from the first race. Lando Norris, George Russell. Constructors is Mercedes, Monster Energy, McLaren, and then Konnersport for top 3. It's Ferrari, Porsche, Williams, and Red Bull Ford on the board. And then 5 other teams not on the board. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, so Mercedes dominance pretty much from this point on, as we look to see what we can do in the next race. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Welcome to season 3 of our Konnersport MyTeam career mode, and we'll see you guys in the next one to see what our drivers can do.